So welcome to Y Exchange. Tonight we're really excited to present these two featured artists. Today we have poet and playwright Clara Hsu and bioengineer and science thriller writer Tom Skalak. Today you'll see these two artists feature their work in 25-minute presentations followed by a 15-minute Q&A. As I will be your chat monitor and also the Zoom host, so if you have any questions technically, you can directly message me. During the Q&A, after we have the presentations, the 15-minute Q&A will come into a gallery view to all see each other and be able to interact and engage with the work that we're seeing tonight. You can also note that this is a publicly recorded event. So if you feel uncomfortable with that, this is for the artists' archive so they can share their work with other artists. So please turn off your screen if that makes you feel uncomfortable. There will be a recording of this event. Also, remember that this is a featured presentation co-presented by Kinetech Arts, ODC Theater, and the Djerassi Resident Artists Program. And it's held every last Wednesday of the month. So if you really like what you see here today, just pass on the word, tell other friends, colleagues to join us. And they can always tune in to our website, kinetecharts.org, to find out more information. Also, last thing I want to say here, do want to acknowledge that we're on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, being in the Bay Area, but everyone now is in a bunch of places. But we also want to recognize that as the original stewards of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone understood the interconnectedness of all things and maintained harmony with nature for millennia. And we want to honor the Ramaytush Ohlone people for their enduring commitment to Mother Earth. So first off, I'm going to introduce our first presenter today. I'm really excited to introduce our first presenter, which is Clara Hsu. She's a piano teacher, actor, poet, playwright, and director of Clarion Performing Arts Center. In 2019, Clara established Clarion Summer Theater. She produced Love on the Magpie Bridge to celebrate the Chinese Night of Sevens Festival. Her second play, The Piano, a play movie, was selected by the 2021 Children's Film Festival in Seattle. Her new play, Neil Armstrong at the Moon Palace, will premiere at the end of this summer. Clara won the Jefferson Award for Public Service in May 2021. Her latest work, The Guy Moso Rap, has gone viral on YouTube. I'll attach a link to that soon. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Take it away, Clara.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Let me share my screen. Okay. Oh, hold on a second. Okay. Okay, I'd like to start my presentation with this illustration by Tinai Pang. And this illustration is based on a Stephen Graziani's interview with me in 2019, titled A Poet's Path of Mastery. I'd like to honor my parents, James and Teresa, and my sister, Gloria. She is on my father's left side, right side. I'm the older one. And my mother passed away when I was 9, and my father was a piano manufacturer in Hong Kong. And the photo that you see on the bottom is a worker drilling a hole on a piano frame. So I grew up in the piano factory. And I came to the United States in 1973 and went to a music school in New Jersey. And in 1980, moved to the Bay Area. My father and I started Clarion Music Center in 1982. Now, you saw the big opening on Waverly Place, but that was not where we started. We started on Sacramento side. You see that red gated entrance with what something looked like a garbage can in front of it. That's where we started. We started in the basement of the building, and we had teaching studios, and we sold piano and violins and Chinese musical instruments. In 1992, we expanded the business and we took over the upstairs street level. So now you can enter through the Waverly Place street entrance, the big door. My dad had a stroke not long after we moved up. And so he sold his portion of the business to me. So now I'm a full-fledged business woman. I started a world music concert series, and we started carrying musical instruments from all over the world and remodeled the entire shop in the year 2000. But I was not a happy woman, and I had not been happy for years without really knowing why, because I seemingly had a lot of things. And so at this time, I'd like to share with you a very short story, and we'll read it together. Somehow my thing froze and I'm not able to go to the next page. Oh, here it is. Okay. Part of the text from the top, it's covered, so I cannot read, but I'll just make it up. I rise from the bed and went into the kitchen. In the darkened room, a streak of moon filtered through the lace curtain, forming a pool of light on the floor. At the far corner, our African gray parrot stirs and makes small clicking sounds with its tongue. I sit down on the stool at the counter holding my head. My mind is full to the point of bursting. What is it that I want? What is missing that is so painful for me? I want. When I lift my head from my hands, I notice something lying in front of me, a yellow notepad and a pen. Without another thought, I grope for the pen. In the quiet semi-darkness, a glittering stream in motion. As if guided by the pool of moonlight, it travels, unhampered, finding a grateful outlet at the tip of the pen, streaming down, curving one letter after another, resting itself on the blank page. On and on the stream flows, pulling along the thread of my grandmama's silk cocoon, the one thread that has spun itself into a labyrinth. When you find the beginning, the rest will unravel. As if I have given birth to another child, I stare with disbelief. On the page is not a heap of jumbled words of disconnected thoughts, but a poem. The ligatures, barely laid down, cried out to me, black ink upon yellow paper, that I have no voice. Playing other people's music, reading other people's books, living in other people's creation, calling it my style. Moved by the skills of others, yearn to emulate, but my imitation is barren of imagination. I have no voice to sing and let my song be heard, because listening to other people's music is what I'm accustomed to. I have no voice to speak and let my pain be spoken, because my pain is told in other people's words. I have no voice to act and let my way be the cause, because actions are taken by others. I let them be the lead. Let the glorious music play. Let the profound words flow. Let imagination run and color and shape the world. But I have no voice of my own, and I don't speak for myself. I have no voice to tell you my love, my life, my all. So this was a revelation. And to this day, I think of it as a miracle. Awareness is the beginning. And writing poems gave me tremendous pleasure and relief. At that time, I was 44 years old. I came into poetry so late in my life, but I wasn't intimidated. The joy of writing something that I could call my own made life meaningful for me. So I wanted to know more, but I couldn't do that and run a business full time. So in 2005, I sold Clarion to my longtime associates and started traveling. So here's a photo on the left is I was in Turkey in Ephesus. And then the top right was a music shop in Marrakesh in Morocco. And we walked in, people were singing and playing instruments. And then on the bottom right is a picture of Syria. It was Palmyra, which was a Roman ruin. I fell in love with the Sahara. So when I celebrated my 52nd birthday in the Sahara with 2 Berbers, 2 camels, and a Japanese tourist, 25-year-old guy I picked up while riding the bus. And you could see that on the bottom that we made a sand cake. And on top of the sand cake were hashish candles. And so we were lighting the candles, but I did not inhale. Okay. So in 2009, I was invited to join John Rhodes and co-hosted his San Francisco open mic poetry podcast TV show. And the show, we did it every month, and it was broadcast on Channel 29. And we did it for 7 and 8 years. John was always try to make the show interesting. So he did a lot of experiments. And this one, he tried to make a 3D viewing of the show. And I was with Kim Shuk, our former poet laureate of San Francisco. And then here is another picture, a more normal picture of the show, but we had to bring in all the props, like the painting and the table and the tablecloth, everything. But during this time, I was taking care of my aging stepmother and my father, but it turned out to be the most creative period. And I think it's because I was determined to find creative outlets while staying at home and looking after the old folks. So I translated the Tao Te Ching, and I wrote a short story about Morocco, my Morocco experience, and I published a full-length poetry books and 2 audio CDs. I was mentored by Jack Foley, the poet Jack Foley, and started to experiment with forms and styles and wrote multiple voice poems. And you can see this is an example here. And I was also mentored by Alan Kaufman in prose writing. So in 2016, after my father passed away, I bought Clarion back, not to do retail again, but to turn the space into a performing arts center, because I wanted to establish a platform for poetry in Chinatown, and I want to share what I've learned. However, I don't think the community at that time was ready for it. Now I want to show you a video clip of a performance at Clarion after I took it back. It is titled The Water Princess, and it was a translation of the Chinese ancient poem by Qu Yuan. The poem was read by Greg Pond and me and accompanied by Guqing master David Wong.
The princess descends, on the north bank.
Gazing, gazing, with sadness.
Weakly blowing, the west wind.
Making ripples on Lake Zhongting, leaves are falling.
Rise upon the nut grass, to see afar.
If the fortuitous time, is near.
Why do birds gather, among the duckweed?
Why do fish nets hung, over the tree branch?
River Yun has angelica, Lee Water has orchids.
Thinking of my good sir, dare not speak.
In a daze, looking out.
Watch the flowing water, in slow motion.
Why does an elk eat, in the courtyard?
Why does a dragon, reside on water's edge?
Morning ride on my horse, by the river.
Crossing in the evening, the west bank.
Hearing the lovely maiden, summoning.
Will rise and ride until all is past.
Fill the room, in the water.
Patch the roof, with lotus leaves.
Sweet flag walls, Murex courtyard.
Pepper flowers strewn, in the pavilion.
Cassia beams, orchid pearlin.
Lintels of magnolia, the bedroom.
Periwinkle is knotted, as brown.
Pleated split basils, spread on the floor.
White jade, has weights.
Stocked with rock orchids, the aroma.
Angelica, in lotus home.
Twining, with the best of wild ginger.
100 plants are gathered, to enrich the abode.
A fragrant symphony, in every room.
The gods of 9 peaks, descend.
They arrive, like clouds.
I fling my sleeves, into the river.
I cast my dress, onto the shore of leaves.
From the water mound, pick galleon.
To leave them, for the one far away.
This time will not, come again.
To linger, in leisure. So the Grant Avenue Follies, they are a cabaret dancers, and they have a history in the Chinatown nightclub era in the 1950s and 60s. And one day they walk into Clarion soon after I took over, and wanted to know if they could rent the space for a murder mystery. And I said yes. And from there on, we developed a very strong and wonderful relationship. The next year, in 2018, the Follies needed an actor to play one of the parts in the murder mystery. So they asked me to be in their play. And here's my character. And the character's name is Pearl Lowe, and she is a severely traumatized young woman with her father being murdered by her mother. Then the Follies found out that I can write. So they wanted me to update their murder mystery, and I did. And so here's Perlo again with a new personality, and you see how I transition from Perlo into the next scene.
Beware, beware, my fellow compatriots. One wrong move, you'll end up in a casket. 你这个黑寡妇蜘蛛，我清算你，我打到你，无浅阶级，万岁万岁万万岁 ！Long live the proletariat！ 你想清醒我？唔使慌，行開。Somebody dance, anybody, just dance.
Okay, that's crazy enough. So the director of the Follies, Cynthia Yi, she invited me to perform at the Burlesque Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. Well, I told her, I said, I don't dance. And she said, who asked you to dance? I want you to read a poem to 1,000 people. I can't pass up this opportunity, especially when I found out later that nobody had ever opened a burlesque show with a poem. So we made history that day. And then right before Shelter in Place last year, we did a show at the DNA Lounge for the 10 Asian Burlesque. So I want to show that clip for you.
Forbidden door that stands against desire, and night sweet offer. Golden cape, red silk fans, smoky fishnets, half-drunk eyes. Delight, delight in the horn of lights, yield to luscious hips, heart-shaped lips, sanguine songs of love. Chinatown, oh Chinatown, the enchantress in her phoenix gown conjures with her flowing sleeves, gathers darkness into a silver beam, tosses it into a million stars. Wonders, wonders in the dragon den. Wang bu liao, Wang bu liao.
So I realized that the combination of music, poetry, drama, and art, they are all essential and crucial ingredients in making an effective performance. I want to share my experience with the children in Chinatown. So I wrote Love on the Magpie Bridge, that was in 2019, and we started a children's summer theater. And I'm going to show you a clip of that.
came from the cow god, so he can see the girl. Yes, but the cow god should have given him wings. Even with wings, he can't fly that far. I have an idea. What's your idea? We'll fly the man to the moon. Glad, he's a man. He's heavy. I can't carry myself. We could work together by forming a bridge. Each one of us will carry him for a little while until he reaches the moon. Yeah! With the man bridge, we can carry the man to the moon.
So you are looking at these beautiful magpie costumes. They were handmade by Alice Benedict. And Alex Benedict, also, he gave me so much support, and he did a tremendous job in making the background slides, and you see the background images were all made by him. My second play is The Piano, a play movie, and that was in 2020 and was written as a tribute to my father. But because of COVID, we had to rehearse on Zoom, and then each actor came to Clarion, and I filmed them individually in front of a blue screen. And the footage was put together by my son-in-law, Brent Banaway, and Alex Law also had a huge helping hand in this choreographing the dance, which I will show you now. So our new play this year is Neil Armstrong at the Moon Palace. And we've been in rehearsal since the beginning of June. And it looks like because of the rising COVID numbers that we're gonna have to make it into a movie again. And just want to show you a little bit of the rehearsal picture here. So now I want you to watch this video. It's a conversation that I had in 2015 with a bunch of poets friends. And it was part of the footage of a documentary titled Passion is the Money by Jeff Giordano. Again, this is around 2015. And I happened to find this on YouTube. And here's what I said about poetry and political poems. Not about anger or, anything or political stuff. It's not.
It's a transcendence. It's a transcendence of the,
yeah. And a lot of times I feel. I mean, I have the same feeling, like Charles, that if I hear political poetry and I cringe because I can't stand it. Well, because a good political poem would not be bashing somebody. It would take you somewhere. It would make you realize what is happening out there instead of saying,
it offers solutions. It
offers some kind of thinking, that we only see the play, but we don't know what it's talking about, and I think a good political poem would offer an insight that most of us don't see. Okay, so I'm going to show you the next slide. So what do you think? Am I angry?
後生仔，你咁囂張，
因住我條雞毛掃，
你唔好喺度扭計仔，
因住我條雞毛掃，打打打，打打打，因住我條雞毛掃，
你蝦我，我蝦返你，
因住我條雞毛掃。
We grow up with the sky mo, so it comes down hard and makes your bottom pink, but your brain opens up and you start to think what's right, what's wrong, and what really stinks. Knowledge doesn't generate automatically from your little pea brain. The elders are your teachers, the elders are your guides. When you mess with them, you're committing suicide. Wise guy, wise guy, wise guys.
你熱到去仆街啦你！
因住我條雞毛掃，
中山勢以為好叻仔，
因住我條雞毛掃，
我係你個婆，我係你個媽，
因住我條雞毛掃，
要啱就過來，我唔客氣話，
因住我條雞毛掃。
Drop the violence, drop the hate. Be smart and cool, don't take the bait. Working yourself into such a state. Your manner towards a senior is most irate. Who's the virus that perpetuates the hate? His mouthpiece is warped and his tongue is forked. When you listen long enough, he'll make you hawk. Would you rather be a dog or would you bark?
打打打，打打打，因住我條雞毛掃。
We're showing, warning, raising, forging a better you in the messy boo-hoo. Showing, warning, raising, forging, bring good to the hood, you'll sleep better too.
打打打，打打打 ，Beware, beware of my雞毛掃。
So were we bashing someone or did it offer insight? And people ask me when's the next rap, but this illustration again by Tinai Pang sums up my answer. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Clara. That was wonderful. Loud snaps here. I'm going to advise people to move into gallery view. That's just by going to the top of the right of the screen. We're going to open the floor for a Q&A now. It looks like we have one of our first questions already in the chat by our other featured artist, Tom. Would you like to ask it yourself, Tom?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Clara, I was really intrigued by your description of growing up in New Jersey and then West Coast and then the Sahara Desert. So my question was, how does place have a meaning for you in your poetry?
Place. I caught the travel bug, but that was much later in my life. I think that when I was young, traveling from Hong Kong to the United States, that was a big jump. And in fact, that as soon as I got to New Jersey, and I was a high school student at that time, as soon as I got there, within a year, I wanted to go to Germany. And I remember my uncle got really, really angry with me. So you just got here, why do you want to move somewhere else? And so I couldn't. And for many years, I have not traveled. But going to places really opened up my eyes and seeing different cultures and seeing how other people live really, I think it's so important, not just for poets, but for everybody. And so I have two children, and when they were young, I started encouraging them to travel. And my daughter is the same way now. She just loves to travel. And I think it really enriched one's life and you have a better understanding of, what the rest of the world is.
Thank you, Clara. That was great. And I wanted to pass it on to Wei, who also has a question.
Hi, Claire.
Hey.
I love to see your work. Amazing. And so much humor and light. And actually bring back a lot of memories. Like you're the Revolutionary Guard. It's like you transform a victim into a righteous, powerful Revolutionary Guard. That's hilarious. So I have a question, and not so much a question, but really something I'm just thinking out. I'm thinking, see if you have some comments, have some thought on that. See, I also come from China, probably just a few years after you. And looking at your work, I realized that you actually has a lot of a Chinese element in the work that you're doing. However, like many immigrants, like I come with my friends, a generation where when we came to US, we actually get very disconnected with the Chinese culture. And however, if you look at the past, let's say 100 years, okay, it's a huge turmoil, a lot of events, a lot of deep events happening. So I'm wondering what's like when you make your work. I like you said about when you listen to a political poem, make you cringe. A lot of yes, same thing. But I'm wondering how does this culture identity and in San Francisco, in a Western country, and also how does it affect your thinking and your work?
When I first came to the United States, we were so busy trying to learn the language, trying to learn English, trying to make friends, trying to do school. Everything is a challenge. So there was no time for Chinese language or Chinese book or anything like that. And I was not in touch with it until I discovered poetry, and I was able to enter into a poetry workshop. And in the workshop, at the end of the workshop, it was a 5-day workshop. At the end of the workshop, they asked everyone to stand up. You have to stand up and say a poem from memory. I said, oh my gosh, I just started to write. I didn't have any poems that I can memorize, but I really wanted to participate. I don't want to just sit there. And so it was racking my brain. And then suddenly I thought, well, I know this one poem that I learned when I was a kid. And it was a poem by Li Po, 从前明月光, 4 lines. I said, I'm going to read that. So I did. I got up and I read my poem in Chinese. And people loved it because they didn't expect to hear another language. But for me, I was immediately reconnected with my roots. So talking about miracles, I think that was another miracle that happened. And I felt that there's a sense of connectedness to this very, very ancient and rich and complex culture. But it was after many, many years, after that incident, that I started to really look at Chinese poetry and Chinese literature. And that was because a friend who is a Caucasian friend who lived in China for a few years translated a English poem into Chinese, and he showed it to me, and I thought, well, if he can do it, then I can do it too. So I started to do translation. And when I was taking care of my dad, at that time, I had so much time. I went to his house every day. I sat there and I started working on the Tao Te Ching. And because of that discipline, I think I got reconnected with the language in a really profound way. So I was very happy. I'm very happy about that.
I'd like to make one comment. That line of the poem you recited, and I learned that too when I was a kid, but never make any sense to me until I heard somebody speaking in Cantonese. It make all the sense because the tone is right. The Mandarin is actually not how Chinese speak like couple thousand years ago.
Yes, yes, I think the language was closer to Cantonese. And so for me, it's important. Well, Cantonese is my first language, and I can't speak Mandarin very well. So I always try to recite in Cantonese whenever I go out and do a reading. Just, I love the sound. I want to do it, and I want other people to hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say also, just working with you was such a fun experience with those kids. Those kids were just amazing. So that was a fun experience to see that full thing.
It was pain and pleasure, right?
Yes, over Zoom, it's a very, trying to gather kids' attention over Zoom is a whole other thing.
Oh, it was so hard. Yeah.
They're like, show your face, show your face. All right, well, we only have a few more minutes actually, and we have 2 questions. So, yeah, so I'm gonna go with Nancy because Nancy, you've got your hand up there for a while. So just keep them quick and brief.
Yeah, real brief. Hi, Clara.
Hi.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you didn't really start writing until you were 44. But before then, did you write or did you have an interest in writing, and how did that all start? I'm just really curious about that.
I think when I was in my teens, I had wanted to be a writer. It's just like, any kids, you see something, someone's doing something, you want to be that person. But that was just sort of a fleeting thing. And I love Chinese literature. I read a lot, but I've never written a poem in Chinese or in English. So it's really, really strange because it just happened. And this poem, it's sort of, it just felt like that it had been buried for many, many years and it just wanted to come out. And then once it came out, like the floodgate was open, and I was able to keep doing it. And this is one thing that is very important that my dad said. He didn't say it to me, he said it to my stepbrother. He said, if you want to be good at something, put 20 years of work in it.
It's just really amazing. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Yeah.
And our last question is going to be both a question and an announcement from Dai.
Hi, Clara. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation. I feel very inspired. I'll be brief because we don't have much time, but in your first poem, you talked about finding your voice. And I'm very curious because this is something that every artist go through, and some of them break through and others don't. So I'm very curious to know, like, what happened, what clicked, what made you like find your voice, like how did that happen?
I think that awareness that I have no voice was very important, because I could be good at doing a lot of things, but they never felt like the right thing for me. A lot of things that I could be very good, but I feel intimidated by other people. But when I write poetry, I don't feel intimidated. I've never had that feeling. And I think that is important. That is an indicator that this is what you're supposed to do. You know, I have no shame in writing. So I think that is the prerequisite. If you want to do something and if you want to just keep doing it, you cannot be held back in that sense.
Beautiful, Clara. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Clara.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to acknowledge my Auntie Patsy. I think she is in the room. And Auntie Patsy is like my mother. There she is. And she took care of me when I was in New Jersey for many, many years until I married. Auntie Patsy, if you want to show your face and say hi to everybody. Hey, oh, there we go. We see her head. There we go. Thank you so much for coming, Auntie Patsy.
Thank you, Auntie Patsy. You did a good job. All right, thank you so much. All right, thank you, Clara. I just want to make, before we move on, I just want to make a very brief announcement. For those that do not know Kinetech Arts, we are a dance company that does intersection of dance, science, and technology. And we hold an open lab every Wednesday night, except the last Wednesday of the month, which we do the Y Exchange. And it happens every Wednesday from 7 to 8:15. Right now we are doing it through Zoom. So if you would like more information about it, I'm actually gonna just ask Alex to put the information on the chat. If you would like to join us, it's open for anyone that likes to be creative, likes to play, likes to make poems and talk about technology and dance. It's quite open on that way and everyone can participate. Also, I would like to let you know that we are resident artists at ODC Theater right now, and we're about to finish our residency, and our last show is going to be October 23rd and 24th. It's going to be a 4-hour installation performance. So save the date. We would love to see you there. Okay, I'll pass the ball to Alex so that we can continue.
Yeah, sure. And I'm just going to do the same. I'm going to pass the ball for Tara to introduce our next presenter.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And you can hear me, right? Yeah, okay, great. So I am thrilled tonight to welcome Tom Skalak to Y Exchange on behalf of the Djerassi Resident Artists Program, where I am the program director. Tom is writing an eco-sci-fi novel from his perspective as an outsider in the world of contemporary fiction while being an insider in the world of science and tech. He is the Vice President for Research Emeritus at the University of Virginia and the founding executive director of the Paul Allen Frontier Group, which funds biological research around the world. 3 years ago, he joined the Joe and Clara Wu Tsai Foundation, started by Joe Tsai, co-founder and vice chairman of the multinational technology group company Alibaba Group. As senior advisor to Clara Wu Tsai, Tom advises philanthropic investments in science and art. Tom was a writer in residence at the Djerassi Resident Artists Program in 2018, and he took part in the Leonardo at Djerassi session, which brings together those working at the intersection of art and science. And he is writing what he calls a near-term eco-sci-fi novel, and drawing from his long career in tech and science. His novel is highly plausible, and that's what drives the pace of the thriller. And tonight, Tom is going to talk about his personal path and innovation, and also share some of the visual art he created while at Djerassi. And so I'm very excited to hear about the progress he has made in the last few years on his thriller novel. So welcome to Tom Skalak.
Thank you, Tara. Happy to be here. And I want to also thank Alex and Wei for your amazing and inspiring view of how to bring intersections of art and science together. This has really been fabulous already tonight. I don't have any rap or other videos to show, but I'm going to talk a little bit about my path to what I'm doing now, a little bit as Clara did, telling a bit of her life story leading up to some of her poetry and other work. So let me share the screen here. Okay, did that work, Alex? Yes, good. So as Tara said, you know, I was very fortunate to be able to spend some time at Djerassi, which you can see here on the slide in the background in the evening. It's just an incredibly beautiful natural location where you can look over the hillsides of Northern California out to the Pacific Ocean in the background. And, you know, the first thing you notice when you arrive there from real life is the incredible quiet. At least that's for me was the first almost overwhelming impression. And, you know, for someone who was there to write, that was actually fabulous. Although I quickly found many distractions. There's a fantastic library there. So I read about 6 or 8 books in the first 6 or 8 days, which in some ways pulled me away from what I was trying to do with my own writing. And then there's also visual art all around the property. If you've never been there, it's a fantastic place to go take a hike and observe some of the visual art that's been put in place around the land. What I want to talk about today is a little bit about this novel continental shift, but also these ideas which really are part of my path to wanting to write. And actually, not just to express, you know, myself or get the writing out, but actually I had a kind of almost a mercenary or a mission driving it, which is I really felt I had come to believe that the public really needed to be inspired about science serving humanity. Feels like it's something we're losing in the world, and I felt was very important. And really the way to that, I felt like was helping people fall in love with knowledge again. Because, you know, all children are in love with knowledge and play, as we've just seen, I think, from Clara. But as you grow older, sometimes you can kind of fall away from valuing the sense of play and the sort of sense of exhilaration and finding new knowledge, a sense of curiosity. So I wanted to try to use this book to help people fall in love with knowledge again. And then, as I said, I'll talk a little bit about remaining the artist. Actually, you know, it's sometimes hard to do as you move through a life. And Djerassi was really great for me because I also got back into visual art a little bit, which I had been in love with since I was young. Okay, now my, for some reason now my advancing is not working either. Okay. So I wanted to start with this question. Why is true innovation so hard to recognize? And whether in science or technology or in the creative arts? And I felt sometimes like it's because of revolution makes life permanently different. And people simply have trouble sometimes imagining change. So innovation often remains invisible until it just bursts into view. And this is my favorite picture of kind of a sudden change. This was a volcanic eruption in the Pacific Ocean near Tonga. And you can imagine, well, it's obvious once it happens, but you could imagine before it happened, this change, the surface of the ocean would have been perfectly placid and calm, and there would be absolutely no sign of this dramatic change. But of course, after it happens, everyone can see it. And a lot of innovation is like that. Well, I wanted to say a few things about my path to some of the things I'm going to show you later, a little bit as Clara did. So when I was in 3rd grade, I actually spent a year living in Sweden. So this upper left picture is of Santa Lucia in Sweden, because that's my image of my sisters who you know, robed themselves in full regalia, and we sang the songs and everything. I actually learned to speak Swedish fluently when I was in 3rd grade. So that was my 2nd language. Then actually, Clara, interestingly, which I didn't know till tonight, in 1973, I was living in New Jersey, in Leonia, New Jersey, right by the GW Bridge. So I grew up in northern New Jersey. And these were my heroes, this diverse team. You see the New York Knicks, that's the basketball team in New York. They won the world championship in those years. And it was a really great team. The guy in the middle there is actually Bill Bradley, who became a US Senator later. But anyway, I played a lot of basketball because that's what you did as a boy in New Jersey at the time. And then I went off to college down in Baltimore. And when I was there, I actually studied bioengineering, as Tara said. But I also had a minor in art history. So I kept in love in a way and in touch with the visual arts all through my career. Then I went to the West Coast, which you see at the bottom right, to study bioengineering further in San Diego, at UCSD. But I also took up surfing, which I had never done. Being near the ocean was almost like a new playground for me, because you know there's a lot of concrete in New Jersey and New York, and that's what I had grown up with, concrete and chain link fences. And so to have a vista like this one here, and to actually be sitting out in their ocean, you know, the raw ocean, was a very kind of a primitive thing, almost a return to a primordial state. And so I really loved just being out in the water. Then I crossed the country back again, which you see in the upper left, to the University of Virginia. I was there for 30 years in engineering, but also, you know, as the vice president there, you know, I had the pleasure of putting together a lot of art and science programs, actually connecting all kinds of things across the university. Also to work with corporations. Here I show one, the drug company, and also with the White House. We worked with Obama's White House to actually write the national plan, if you will, although you really can't plan for it, but we tried for innovation, and innovation that could reach every little pocket of the country, so that we were trying to encourage regional innovation, people using their own talent wherever they are in the country to do what they know best. Then I moved back to the West Coast, you see at the bottom right, to work with Paul Allen. As Tara mentioned, this was a summit we produced to try to inspire other philanthropists about the value of knowledge and creating knowledge for the world. The reason I went to work with Paul Allen was that he really had this deep feeling. His parents, his father was a librarian and his mother was a scholar, also a teacher. And so he had this deep love for knowledge, even though he had created Microsoft. And amazingly, he wrote the code for Microsoft in 3 months in 1975, actually 2 years after Clara was in New Jersey. And so, and that was an incredible burst of creativity. And that changed the world. So like the Silicon Valley mantra, you know, we break things and move fast and change the world. He actually did that in 3 months. So that was quite amazing. But he also owned a professional football team, and they won the Super Bowl. He built an art museum in Seattle. And he did many other things like winning the SpaceX Prize, investing in brain science and things like that. So it's really a pleasure to work with someone who was really so eclectic in his thinking, but at the core valued new knowledge. So really reinforced for me this idea that the country and society in general really needed to fall in love with knowledge again. So I came to this kind of philosophy as we were making investments in science, that every child, as Picasso said, you can see, you know, every child's an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once one grows up. And, you know, this strikes me as really summing everything up, and actually summing up, you know, what Clara was expressing, you know, at age 44, when her voice kind of reemerged, if you will, and probably was there all the time. And I was kind of feeling the same way, you know, what could I do to help people have this kind of deeper understanding of exploration and creativity and valuing, bringing new knowledge into the world. This is how Paul Allen actually put it. I put a quote from him here because I really respected the way that he wasn't just about solving problems, putting band-aids on things or meeting a market need. But this is how he put it. I found my path in that 2-month rush of creativity back in 1975. Having that kind of impact forever changes your sense of purpose in life. It's a feeling you'll always want to find again. I'm still a dreamer, more intrigued by what might be doable, and I want to keep my thinking forward and unconstrained. And Wei, this reminded me of something you said about your philosophy as well, that you want to give people a space to play and spark up things that are unexpected. This is what Paul Allen felt, and why it was such a pleasure to work with him, because it wasn't just about betting on things that we felt would solve a problem or have kind of standard kind of impact on the world, but he wanted to create environments for scientists, technologists, artists to explore and create new things. And that was really kind of the beauty of his own life philosophy. Now there's a flip to this, which would be expressed here by de Tocqueville, who wrote in Democracy in America back in the 1840s when he visited America coming from France. He said, the nation was absorbed in productive industry, but science no longer existed there. They used a formula without asking for its meaning. They no longer possessed the art of renewing it or altering it. They had lost the power of change. And so improvement was impossible. The source of knowledge was all but dry, and though the stream ran on, it could neither swell its waters nor alter its course. And he was actually talking about Asia in the middle centuries in this quote. But here's what Bloomberg said in 2018. The US drops out of the top 10 in innovation ranking. So de Tocqueville could have equally well been aiming his comment at this. But about the same time, the Wall Street Journal said the Enlightenment is working. So I was getting confused at that time. Well, who's right? So is the US becoming obsolete, or is the world still improving in every way due to the growth of knowledge and the application of knowledge and creativity? And then I realized, both actually are really saying the same thing, which is to keep creating and applying new knowledge, and ideas drive progress. So through all of this experience, I just ended up feeling at that point, as I said, we need to fall in love with knowledge again. And so I got to thinking, well, what could I do? Because I was in science and technology mainly at the time, making investments in science. And so I thought about what Questlove thought about this. And he made this observation at an event with us. He said, sometimes when you feel on top of your game, which maybe, we could have felt that way with Paul Allen, that we were investing in some of the best science and technology. You just need to clean out the studio and start fresh and go make your art record. And, but then he said, well, when they did that, which was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album, it failed. And instead it became a huge success and influenced the whole industry. So they thought they were making their art record, but actually it was a big success. And Paul Allen, just to drive the point home a little bit, here's another event, with Paul. He was an amazing blues guitar player, actually. And so here he is playing on stage with Joe Walsh, which you may remember from the Eagles or his own, hits. And Quincy Jones, who was actually at this event with us, who won 28 Grammy Awards, said, Paul can really play. He's good, man. So it just, again, for me, drove home that here's a guy who in 3 months created Microsoft, a technology, but at the same time, what did he choose to do then later was to play music. And of course, he had an incredible art collection as well. So I thought, well, I could do more in science. And here's some of the things, we were thinking about at the time. This is actually a blind tadpole that you're looking at here in the photograph. And amazingly, one of the groups we were working with was using a bioelectric code, no alteration of the genes of this animal whatsoever, just programming the bioelectricity at the skin surface, and they could grow a new eye so that this thing could now actually have sight. So there were some amazing things happen. Another thing that Paul Allen was always interested in was superlative human qualities like intelligence or perfect pitch or photographic memory. How do these miracles happen? And we actually don't know. Biology is a very young field, which makes it a pleasure to work in. So we were playing around with ideas like this. But then finally I realized, and now I'm going to get to the novel idea. So I was lucky to be invited to go to Djerassi, and I decided what I wanted to do, because individual science and technology projects only reach a certain amount of the population and so forth. I realized I wanted to write a novel. So my goal was to write a genre thriller, and the idea was that a bioscientist in California, the protagonist, discovers a way to recover polluted brownfields in Eastern Europe, where the Soviet Union had destroyed a lot of the agricultural capability there. And by doing so, rekilter the balance of power between Europe, which could now feed itself better, North America, the US, and Asia, so that it would alter the intercontinental flow of goods and thus power. And by doing so, actually reduce human conflict and usher in greater harmony and peace. And the driver for this continental shift, which is the title, would have been the scientific innovation. So that's in essence what I'm doing in this novel. And here you see the concluding scene pictorially, of course, which is the scientist and his girlfriend, who's a CEO of a cybersecurity company in California, who hides the code from the people chasing them, which includes the CIA, who want to suppress it, and large corporate forces who want to also acquire the technology and put it on the shelf to protect their own interests. So some of the evil people do get killed in the thriller and so forth. And the good prevails, but it's the good driven by the new knowledge. So that's the point of, realizing that new knowledge really does drive harmony and welfare and, good for humanity worldwide. So that's the goal in the book. And the protagonist in the end will, win the Nobel Peace Prize and so forth. And then there'll be lots of sequels. So while I was at Djerassi, I did have the pleasure of talking to Andy Weir for this interview that I think Tara may have mentioned, but that was a lot of fun because, as you may know, he's the best-selling author of The Martian, which got made into a blockbuster movie with Matt Damon. And when we were chatting about it, it was very encouraging for me because what he said was, my Matt Damon character in The Martian doesn't change his character from beginning to end of the book. All he's doing is solving problems one after the other. So he was very unabashed about not writing a character-driven novel, but rather having the problem-solving drive it. And he was a technology person, a software guy for 25 years, not dissimilar to kind of the story of Clara writing at 44 or myself beginning this book at even later age. And so that encouraged me a lot. And also, so then that gave me the idea that, and I've had one offer so far for the movie rights, but the idea would be that, yes, this book, which is actually has a underlying message of knowledge serving society, would be in the form of a thriller. So this is actually my absolutely mercenary goal for the book, to have it come out as well as a movie. So here you have Matt Damon in Continental Shift. And the other thing I learned at Djerassi that was very encouraging was that Steven Soderbergh, who was a director of many Hollywood thrillers, once said that genre films are a great place to hide. And what he meant was, he had many messages that he wanted to get out to the world, but he felt that he could get them across while still entertaining an audience by using the genre thriller in his movies. And so very much that was what I was trying to do. So I had encouragement from a lot of voices when I was at Djerassi, which I really appreciated. Now, speaking of genres, I did want to switch gears, and I'll do this probably now in a couple minutes, Alex, to keep on time so we can have questions. But I did want to read a poem by Rita Dove. I had the pleasure of working with Rita Dove at the University of Virginia. She's a former poet laureate of the United States. And she became a poet, but she had brothers and sisters became scientists and engineers. And so this poem's called Geometry. And it is, I prove a theorem and the house expands. The windows jerk free to hover near the ceiling. The ceiling floats away with a sigh. As the walls clear themselves of everything but transparency, the scent of carnations leaves with them. I'm out in the open, and above, the windows have hinged into butterflies, sunlight glinting where they've intersected. They're going to some point, true and unproven. So it was this last part that just really resonated with me. And again, you know, having this tolerance for ambiguity, for play, for the unexpected, going to points unproven seemed like the way to me to create new paths. And so this is a picture of an event we held at the Picasso Museum in Paris, actually. And, you know, it was about creating new paths between art and science. But at Djerassi, again, going back to that, the natural landscape is so exhilarating and also tranquil that you see on the right here. And on the left in this photograph, you see the writer's studio in which I was writing, you know, looking at a computer screen, putting words on a page. But I felt like the intersection of these two very different worlds, the inner world of writing and expressing one's inner thoughts, and then the external world, it really created an incredible juxtaposition. And this was very distracting. And also one morning, there was a 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing offshore, meaning out in this picture, creating a swirl. It was very loud because it was creating a swirling vortices right at this sharp edge between the two worlds. So I created this photographic work. That was my first visual work of art at Djerassi. I call it the mirror of the world. And here you see the trigram, which is the symbol for water. And you see the yang lines in the middle, so symbolizing sun and light moving upward, and the yin lines at the top and bottom, symbolizing the downward or inward flow of dark or moon. And the two create a swirl, a vertice, which is what I was feeling at that time about this intersection between the natural world and the interior life of the mind that I was trying to get into the book. And then as you walk around the Djerassi property, you see all these incredible works of art. Here you see a redwood, but behind it pops up something interesting that an artist that had been in residence previously had done in the woods. And all around the property, you experience these amazing works. So I created this visual work, which is now in the a permanent sculptural work at Djerassi, which I call Watch. And this is actually constructed by subtractive writing, as I call it, by removing 3 words and adding a single period, which transformed the sign from a utilitarian thing for the ranch into a gateway to transcendence. At least that was the objective of the work. And you know, it reminded me of what Mark Twain said, you can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. So this sign started like this at the left. It was a ranch sign that said, watch for livestock. And it was on a trash pile at the rear of the property. And we were encouraged to consider works there that would be, take into consideration upcycling and respect for the land and the environment. Actually, Alex, a bit as in your opening remarks. And so here you see at the right, the work in progress. I was grinding away the 3 words. That's the subtractive writing. I left in place the 9 bullet holes that you see here at the left that had been put there by the prior exuberance of the ranch hands, including probably Carl Djerassi's son, Dale Djerassi. So those are still on the work. And here you see the work ready for installation at the right with the words ground away. And this is the installation piece that I put there, and let me read part of it. The idea was to extend our collective memories far back in time beyond our own ancestors. Watching provides the other, which makes us whole. We return from this place to the world, but we're changed forever by the profound awe available to those who watch. And having possessed it, we may find peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Wonderful. I'm going to put us into gallery view. so we can all see each other. We can stop presenting or stop sharing screen. Amazing. Wonderful work. Thank you, Tom, for being here with us and for sharing that.
I have a question.
Yeah, go, Hannah.
Okay, my question is, if you can deconstruct a novel, meaning how much of it is imagination, how much is taken from life experience and reality, and what is the mix of it?
Yeah, in this one, it's all fiction. You know, another thing I learned at Djerassi was that Carl Djerassi, in his biography, his autobiography, when he was 92 years old, which I read because it was in the library there too, he said that at age 68, Clara, unlike you at age 44, at age 68, it took him to wake up to his own voice. And he said he realized that only in fiction can the real truth be told. So that's the reason I chose the fictional form for creating the space for people to fall in love with knowledge again. And so it's all fiction, but some of the attributes and characters and habits of the characters are taken from real individuals in life, from my life experience, and the science and the way that the innovations in science come to life in the laboratory and then make their way out into the world, into the real world, dealing with things like intellectual property, commercial forces, governmental regulation and governmental forces, and international competition. All those are real. And so the idea is to create this plausible near future thriller, if you will. It's not science fiction. It feels as if it's real and plausible and could happen and is happening. So that's why I call it a near future science thriller. So there's a mix of all the characters are imaginary completely. The story is imaginary completely, but it's very plausible.
So nobody can sue you.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know. What do you suggest? Maybe I should have some where people can sue me or make it more exciting. But right now, no.
It will help to promote it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That would be easy promotion. That's a good point.
All right, I'm gonna pass it on to Tara, and then after that we'll go with Clara and then Wei.
So I really want to know, how far are you? What progress have you made? And when will it be finished? And do you have a publisher? Because we want the reality of when we can read it.
Oh, yeah. So yes, it's finished. It's in revision right now. And yes, I have a publisher in New York that looks firm, I would say. So possibly next year.
Wow. And this is your first book that you are publishing?
The very first fictional book, yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. I wasn't sure if it was still in the formation stages, so that's really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I can make another comment about that. It's been 3 years since I was at Djerassi, just for all of you who don't know that. And, you know, I went back to, unlike Clara, whose story I really loved and was jealous of, but I went back to kind of a professional life after this almost suspended month. It was only 1 month at Djerassi, but it was such a incredible inspiration and sort of a weightless feeling to be completely untethered and unconnected to any professional responsibilities. But when I left there, I took up new professional responsibilities. And so that actually really did change the time course of finishing the book.
I'm gonna let Clara take it from here. You're muted, by the way.
That was my question of how long you actually stay in the residency, because so actually it took you 3 years to complete the novel, but the time that you did it was while you were working.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was there for, I'll tell you the details, because I found it fascinating myself as I was watching what I was doing in real time. So it's a 30-day residence. You're fully there, you're disconnected from the world, food is provided and so on. And you think, wow, I'm gonna get so much done, or at least I did, because I already had the whole thing plotted, I had all the characters sketched, I had started working on it well before that, obviously. And I wrote about, well, in the first 8 days, as I said, I read about 8 books, and I began working on those visual works. So, because there are other visual artists there and dancers and things, and it was very easy to get kind of interacting with them and not be selfish enough to stay in your room typing on your book, which I heard from them. Some people do that, but I couldn't do that. So I only had 3 weeks. And so in 3 weeks, I wrote there about 65,000 words in 3 weeks, but probably only, another 150,000 in 3 years. So that shows you the value of being in that suspended space. And I felt like if I could have stayed in that suspended space for 2 months, it would have been done.
But none of us are that lucky to have that kind of space. And
yeah.
I feel that sometimes when there's pain, there's gain, right? So now in an ideal situation, it's oftentimes we think that we could get something accomplished, but I think that little pins and nails, just sticking into your body and make you do things, actually make you focus even more, because you want to not be thinking of all these things that are unpleasant, but you want to just focus on your creative side. And it's tremendous to write fiction, to write a novel. I think it's so much work.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's sort of something I have to say, Clara, really resonating. I felt you were kind of a kindred spirit, although you have done much more than I in the world of writing so far with your poetry. But in the sense that, I've wanted to do this, I had planned to finish my first novel by the time I was 32. That didn't happen for the same reason. But, and I think of a lot of writers where this happens. Carl Djerassi was one who wrote his first novel at 68. And he said, now I finally am able to tell my truths. This is what I should have done much earlier. Joseph Conrad wrote his first book at 33. Claude Monet, when he was 72 and he painted the water lilies, said, I'm just beginning to see. So, history is full of this sort of, trying to get untethered and then let the thing come out. So I had very much that experience, that it was just coming out when I was at Djerassi. But then unfortunately, I re-entered that other professional space. And so then that really slowed things down.
This is beautiful. I love hearing about the specifics. It's, it's very grounding for an artist here in this space. I'm going to pass it on to Wei, who's been having his hand up for a while.
Hi, Tom. Very inspiring, very profound. And especially it drive the home when you say that share the knowledge, making people love the knowledge again. That's in today's environment, it's extremely relevant. And coming from China and going back history, back in China and Japan, in Asia, the science and technology was not in the mind at all, simply 150 years ago. And then after that, the science and technology has been forefront, first in Japan, now in China as well. And over here, I realized there is a culture of, how should I say it? It's a believing self rather than the science. And I'm wondering, I know you already started writing books. It seems like you found a pathway, but just very curious to see what you thought about. To me, it's not just individual people be creative, be able to have a transcendence, but more about how does the culture can be influenced, how or does it need to be influenced? And very curious to hear your thought around that subject.
You mean to appreciate knowledge and science? Is that what you're asking? How the whole society could be feeling that inspiration?
Right. So like, if only us,
no, I understand. No, that's exactly why, that's exactly why I decided to write a genre thriller. Because I've been in science for 35 years. I've been in the top places in the world and traveled the world. We funded things all over the world. And, but then if you're only working with ourselves, like you were a physicist, I think, at one point and so forth. Yeah, exactly. Then you're preaching to the choir. So the reason I chose the genre thriller was exactly because I realized, how do you make a bigger difference? Well, you can run for Congress. Maybe you could argue for political change through art. You could do a number of things, right? Start a movement, whatever your particular skill set is. But I realized that often genre books and film can change the way people think and feel. And they're often taken as somewhat superficial, but that's why I mentioned that quote from Steven Soderbergh, who made thrillers. But it was very profound, I thought, when he said, you can hide inside a genre film, and that's exactly my actually uber strategy here, is to hide inside the genre thriller, so it can be in airport newsstands, and anyone can pick it up anywhere, and then hopefully in film, so that then it can reach more people. But that's the attempt, and doing that through children's books is another way, or young adult fiction would be another way, reach people in their formative years. So there's a variety of ways one could imagine doing it, but this was one I felt was accessible for me and I would enjoy doing. And you have to do what you enjoy, and so that's how I came up with the idea of the genre thriller. And what's funny, what you said about China is that if you think about dialectical materialism in Marxism, which was the basis of the Communist Party in China, it actually was aimed at freedom of the individual originally, amazingly. And so is the US Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So they're both aimed at freedom on paper. But then, as you say, look at our last year in this country, and we're losing our love of knowledge and of science and truth. And so in a way, it absolutely points at recovering that love of truth, but along with it, the freedom of the individual, because that's key for making art. And art is all about freedom and vice versa. And science is about truth and the freedom to pursue truth. So these things really go together.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, will be the last question for today.
Okay, I will ask the question. We live in a social media environment, and so much of, we hear so much complaints and critiques that people don't read. So my question is to you, I will make it very short. What is the future of libraries?
Wow, what a great question. It's interesting. In my foundation, we've actually considered Andrew Carnegie and what his contribution to the world by funding libraries philanthropically, and how that made a huge difference at that time. But as you point out, now we're in a different time, and it's a digital, world where everyone has their own brand. There's no authorities, there's no central knowledge reservoir, and people may not go to a library and pick up a physical book anymore, or for reference even. Despite that, I have to say, I still see people reading books all the time. And I'm wrestling with that. And I think the whole publishing, library, museum world is wrestling with it also. You could equally well ask, what's the future of museums where objects are displayed? Maybe the future is that there are no museums and art happens everywhere, not in specific sites. So I really don't have a perfect answer for you. But I guess it's just an observation of people around me that I think there's a hunger in everyone for self-expression and for understanding others and for empathy with the other, as Clara, I thought, beautifully expressed, the idea of traveling to understand the other and maybe spark up your own creative fire. So I think all those come together in what you have in a library or a museum or a book or a film or a poem, work of music, is that they connect people over time and distance. And whether that's a physical library in the future, I don't know, but I think there will be some replacement for it that is not just today's social media, because it's not satisfying that urge that is in people.
Well, I just feel that it's such a dichotomy because museums and libraries are really depository of knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know what their future is, but I know that every museum director and every library director, in some ways, to make it kind of sadly funny, libraries have become coffee shops now. They're all competing on who has the nicer lounge and better coffee, shop. And it's kind of sad to see that they've changed in this way, trying to adapt to the modern world. But people are still going to museums to see works of art and other things, and people are still, reading. So I guess time will tell.
May I just intersperse that because of COVID, our libraries have been closed. My library right next door is still shuttered. The museums are just starting to open, with the exception of a few that were open in Golden Gate Park, but very carefully. And then they shuttered down again, and then they opened. So we're going to hope that the new world, that we'll figure out how to combat viruses and still have a viable artistic community.
Yeah.
But thank you for that mention.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for was sorry to go over. I know we're 5 minutes over, but I just want to do an audible applause here because this was a wonderful conversation with two wonderful artists. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you so much, Clara, for showing and sharing your work with us. I know there's many more conversations to come from this. So I will be sharing, resources in an email following up to everyone here that showed up. So don't worry if you didn't get every link on the chat. And so stay tuned for that in tomorrow. And I just want to let you guys know that we're here every last Wednesday of the month. So always come back, tell people, share the message that this is a place for people to cross over on ideas in art and science, technology, and to really bridge those communities. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night, afternoon, morning, wherever you are.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.